Okay, YouTube, question. What is the most important factor that determines a good picture? The exposure? The exposure. No, it's the... Yeah, in fact, yeah, of course, exposure. But you read the title. Today I'm going to talk about composition. In fact, exposure and composition are two tools that allow you to influence the most important factor of a good photograph: readability. My name is Nico, I'm a director and photographer, and in this video, which is part of a whole series of videos to teach you the basics of photography, we will explore all the techniques that makes a good composition. So if you are a beginner, keep your ears open, but even if you're already at a very advanced level, believe me, today you'll learn some good stuff. If you stay with me until the end of this video, I guarantee you that your photos will never be the same again. What we are going to see today is not limited to photography. Composition is also essential in video, painting, design, well, in anything related to image creation. That's actually what makes it an artistic creation. The composition is the language used by the photographer to transcribe in an image a snapshot of the reality. Let me explain. You have probably been somewhere or seen a place that looked amazing, but when you took a picture, nothing interesting came out of it. Unlike your experience of reality, which happens to be in real time and where you can change the vision that you have by looking around you, photography is limited to a specific moment, but it's mostly limited to a framing. The definition of composition could therefore be limited to the way you frame a scene, but it is actually much more complex than just all the things you decide to put within the limits of your viewfinder. A better definition will be all techniques for arranging the shapes and color of an image in the best way to make it easier to understand and pleasing to the eye. You have probably already heard about composition techniques. The most famous one, for example, is the rule of third. Promise, we'll look at it in detail, but we have to understand that it's just technique. And before working on the technique, we have to understand the concepts behind the composition. There are three major concepts: the balance, the structure, and the focal element. The focal point is the element that will directly attract the eye at the first reading of the image. So it is your role to choose how you will put it forward and how to guide the reader's attention to it. Let's take a very simple example. Is there a more boring image than this one? Why? Simply because there is no defined principal subject. All you have to do is rearrange a little bit, and it's a little bit more interesting right away. So what techniques can be used to highlight this element? Well, we won't be lost there. I've talked about it a billion times in previous videos. To improve the readability of an image, the most important of all techniques is obviously to use the depth of field. By blurring the background, attention is focused on the main subject that is in the sharpness area. The composition is then simplified and the eye finds directly where to focus. It's a technique commonly used in portraits. In this image, for example, I deliberately shoot wide open so that the background does not catch all the attention and lets the face pop up. Look at this picture. It will only take a few seconds for your brain to detect the face in these black and white shapes. Why? Thanks to an evolutionary process, the human brain is programmed to detect and analyze the faces it can see. It is an unborn neurocognitive principle that even infants have very early in their development. This is due to the importance of faces in communication between human beings and the need to recognize identities. When you observe an image, your brain will jump on all the faces it can identify. You can compose a picture by placing a face where you want it because the reader's eyes will necessarily be attracted by this point. The motion blur, the blur due to the movement of the subject or the environment, can have the same effect as the depth of field. It will serve to isolate a part of the image. Let us look at some examples. Here, the car is immediately put forward. It is the only sharp subject on a blurry background. We call that panning with motion blur. To get this kind of effect, it's very simple. First, a slow shutter speed is used. Of course, this will depend on the context, but 1/30th of a second is a good starting point. Then you must try to follow the subject's movements by triggering the camera. You got it. The goal is to make your eyes catch onto a particular element in a mass of information. Using contrast is a very powerful way to do it because it is how our brain creates the sensation of depth, thanks to its ability to separate dark areas from bright areas. That's why a low contrast image looks flat.
Here, your eye will automatically be attracted by the light part of the image. Conversely, here it will be attracted by the silhouette. When facing a background with a lot of elements, try to place your subject where it will be the most contrasted to capture attention. Saturation works on exactly the same principle as contrast. By layering color in the same shade, your eye will really have trouble separating the different elements, which will not be the case by using colors that contrast with each other. And the goal is to do it in a way that is pleasing to the eye, so you will have to study the color theory. It is a very vast topic, but for example, you can use complementary color, i.e. colors diametrically opposite on the color wheel, where the contrast is the highest, but which also constitute an aesthetic combination.
As I mentioned, it's a topic that deserves a lot of videos on its own. If you are interested, don't hesitate to tell me in the comment section so I can make video on it. As I said at the beginning of this video, a photo is a representation of reality, limited by a frame, which may seem simplistic, but you can take advantage of that and create a frame within the frame of the photo itself.
By excluding all information on the edges, you will direct the eye to a specific point. You will create a context, meaning. Any element can be used to create a frame: walls, trees, tunnels, windows.
Right now, you're watching this video and your eyes are focused on my face for several reasons. One, because I'm pretty good looking, and two, we saw it because your brain is attracted by faces. But what if there were lines leading to a particular point? Your eyes will automatically start following there.
Again, that's because it allows us to visualize the volume in space, what we call vanishing line. By identifying the elements of an environment that contain its line and framing them to point to your subject, you will automatically focus the attention where you want it. Here again, the principle is the same. Simple geometric shapes, such as triangles, rectangles, are automatically recognized by your brain. Not only will these shapes help to create a structure in your composition, but they will also help to give particular feelings. Rectangles and squares will help to give an impression of stability through close angles. It is common to play with these forms in architectural photography. Circles and ovals are the opposite since they have no angle, they will rather help to give a feeling of movement in the image. The triangle composition, which has been used for centuries in painting in particular, directs the eye directly to the tip of the triangle.
When we talk about composition, most people actually refer only to structure. Before, it was a question to understanding where the point of interest of an image is heading, but with the structure, we will really organize the position of elements of an image.
Our brain is programmed to like simplicity, and it's very difficult for it to understand several shapes arranged in a totally random way, in no apparent order. It needs visually recognizable structure to improve its understanding of a situation.
You definitely heard about it. The rule of third is an elementary rule of composition for an image. It's extremely simple. Just draw invisible horizontal and vertical line every third of your frame, like that.
You can now use these lines to place your horizon in order to avoid centering it. In this case, you give importance to the ground, in this case, importance to the sky. The points where lines intersect are points of strength where the eye will be caught. Placing your subject on these points generally results in a more harmonious composition. It's such a common rule that most cameras allow you to display the rule of third lines in your viewfinder.
What you have to remember from this rule is that third parties have more strength in an image, and therefore you must absolutely avoid centering your image. Next tip. Center your image. Well, yes, I know what I said. Centering a subject can really work well when you bring balance to the image with symmetry.
To do this, simply cut the image in half vertically and horizontally and look for the same or similar structure on each side. It sounds simple, but you have to be good enough not to make a boring and uncontrasted picture of it. If you are looking for inspiration, the master in this is obviously Wes Anderson. Don't hesitate to go and study the composition of these films.
Since the dawn of time, artists have wondered if it was possible to create a formula for beauty. Well, it seems so, and it's looked like that.
2 Bayer tablets give you all the pain relief power your headache can use. Bayer is pure aspirin.
Okay, let's try to explain what that means.
The golden ratio is to admit that the proportion will be pleasant, even divine, when the unique ratio AB between two lengths A and B, such that the ratio of the sum A plus B of the two lengths to the largest A is equal to that of the largest A to the smallest B.
Well, no worries, I don't understand what I'm saying either. But stay with me, I swear, it's gonna be interesting at some point. Hope so. The ratio is illustrated by the Fibonacci sequence, i.e. each number in this sequence is equal to the sum of the two previous ones.
Our formula is expressed by the number phi, which, like the number pi, is infinite. It is rounded to 1.618. Let's illustrate this. Take a rectangle whose dimensions are 1 by 1.618. If you draw a square of 1 by 1 in this rectangle, you also get a new rectangle with the same proportion of 1 by 1.618, and this to infinity. This proportion is called the divine proportion because it is found everywhere in nature. It is all around us. We've been using it since time immemorial in architecture, painting, all the arts.
So I know it sounds complicated, but in the end, it's an upgraded version of the rule of thirds. It's used in the similar way. Another technique is to create depth by putting a point of interest on the different layers of an environment. Have an element in the foreground, in the center, and in the background to create a reading direction in the depth of the image.
A photograph is flat by nature. Trying to translate depth visually will make the image more immersive and therefore more pleasant to read. It is therefore necessary to use the contrast of the different planes to separate each of them and make the whole readable. Another behavior of the human brain that we can use to our advantage in terms of composition, we are attracted by the repetition and texture, the patterns, by the visual harmony that it generates. It can also give totally different feelings depending on the rhythm of the repetition, between something very calm or completely unstructured and abstract.
Okay, if you understood the principle of structure, you know that the goal is to avoid elements that will distract the eyes of the main subject by trying to order them in one way or another. Well, why not completely remove all distractions? Just shoot full frame on your subject.
This obviously does not prevent you from respecting the other rules of composition, such as the rule of thirds, for example, as in this image, but it generally gives an interesting composition. Moreover, it gives a feeling of proximity with the subject and to be able to concentrate on the details.
Okay, this is the most difficult to define and the most subjective element, even if here again some rules may emerge. The composition of a photo is also determined by whether it is balanced or not. Some elements of an image carry a certain weight, for example by their position, their brightness or their color, and your rule is to balance these elements according to their different weights. Still abstract? Okay, let's try to see some examples.
There is something wrong with my image here. The visual weight of the image is carried by a single element, which, although it certainly does not hinder reading, makes it unsatisfactory. To bring a better harmony, I can counterbalance by adding an element here in the background.
Basically, balance is just that. Any tips to help? Okay, here are some of them.
Our brain reads an image the same way it reads a text, from left to right. In fact, it makes Z like that. It goes from left to right, then when it comes up again an obstacle, it comes back to the left a little lower and starts reading again. That's why the rule of thirds works so well. That's why we usually try to give to the flow of an image a left to right movement. For the same reason, the meaning, the interpretation of a picture is also different if its weight is carried to the right or left. It is said that a character who looks to the right is looking to the future and to the left to the past. In fact, it's because looking to the right gives dynamism by opening the image, while looking to the left gives the impression of closing it. And it's verified by the fact that it's the opposite effect, depending on where you live. In Arabic countries and some Asian countries, where the reading direction is from right to left, an image that goes in this direction is much more pleasant to read for them. So don't ask me why, I don't really know what psychological phenomenon is behind this, but it seems that a composition where there is an odd number of elements is more pleasant to read than with an even number. Apparently when there were two subjects, your brain doesn't know where to focus its attention. But when there are three, in short, I don't know why, I don't think it's the most fundamental and relevant rule in the world, but at least you know it. This rule has been seen a little bit with patterns, but repetition helps to structure an image and therefore to bring it a balance. You can repeat shapes, colors, any elements actually. Less is more. is the mantra of minimalism, and it is also applicable in photography. As we have seen, trying to get rid of all visual distraction help in reading an image. Simplify the background to add contrast around your subject to highlight it. Let's go even further by talking about the negative space of an image. It's the place of the emptiness that you will give to your image. By doing exactly the opposite of what I'm telling you, since we are going to create an image that won't be easy to balance, you're also going to focus attention on the subject. Minimalism, playing on negative spaces, is an artistic genre on its own that requires a lot of talent not to create images that are either flat and uninteresting or quite disturbing because they are lack of balance.
I end with the trick that could also have been classified with geometry and leading lines, but that is very well known for bringing balance to an image and has been used for hundreds of years by artists in painting. It is the use of diagonals.
Diagonals bring strength and movement, and they can separate the image into different parts. But let's go further, just for fun. This diagonal is the Baroque. It separates the image from the lower right corner to the upper left corner. This one is the sinister. It is the exact opposite. Then on the point of force, traces the perpendicular on the two diagonals. They are the reciprocal. This canvas, these guides, have been used for centuries to bring harmony to the compositions.
And there are many other techniques that have been used in painting for centuries. It will take hours to see them all. In the end, learning exposure is just a technical stuff, and you can learn it quickly. Educating your eye to compose an image, it's the real challenge. That's why you have to study painting, films. Every time you look at a picture, you have to try to understand the composition, why the photographer made this choice to highlight his subject. Today, I have already given you 20 techniques to help you improve your compositions, but understand one thing, even if they sometimes call rule, none of them really are. You notice that some are similar and sometimes even contradict each other. And just because you're going to apply one doesn't mean your picture will automatically be good. They are not dogmas, but tools. You can accumulate them, transgress them, and once you master them, forget them. The only rule is that there are no rules. Okay, YouTube my friend, I'm really happy because this video concludes my series of 10 videos on photography basics. I'm really excited for the next part. I really have a lot of ideas for the channel. We're going to talk about videos, there will be tutorials, and also a lot of other very cool things. But I really wanted to start by learning these basics so that everyone can start learning photography properly. If you liked it, you know how YouTube works. Leave a little like to help the channel. If you are interested in these topics, don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel and activate the little bell. Feel free to comment on what you would like to see here on the channel. Take your camera and go practice. See you, mate. Keep on creating.